Dawn Zimmer is with Energy and Sustainability Services at Schneider Electric. She is the former mayor of Hoboken, New Jersey. She served there as the 38th mayor and the first female mayor. She was first elected mayor in a special election in November 2009 and re-elected mayor for another 4-year term in November of 2013. So she was lucky enough to be mayor during Hurricanes Irene and Sandy. Congratulations. Clearly, she has many valuable lessons learned to share with us as well.
Thank you all very much for being here. It's a beautiful afternoon. The weather is wonderful here, and so it's my privilege to be here and talk with you about what I think is really the most important challenge facing our country. And so I want to thank TransRe and the Virginia Coastal Policy Center for sponsoring this, because I think it's a really, really important conversation. And so to tell you a little bit about myself, my name again is Dawn Zimmer. I was the former mayor of Hoboken from 2009 to 2017. So I took the city through Sandy. So, my biggest concern was keeping the community safe. And so what I want to talk to you about today is, what I think are 3 kind of key strategies towards keeping the community safe through the storm, and then in the longer term, revolving around energy resiliency, social resiliency, and flood resiliency. And I want to say up front to everyone here, I recognize we've got rural communities and urban communities. Every community is different, but hopefully, some of the things that we learned might be helpful to you as you figure out how you're going to deal with that storm when it strikes your community, because unfortunately, we're all at risk of having that happen. So again, a little bit about Hoboken. We are a little over 1 square mile city located just across the river, right across the river from New York City. That is the Empire State Building. So I invite you all to come and check out Hoboken if you're up in New York. It's an easy 10-minute path ride across. And we are a city that's built on marshland. So, practically 90% of our city is in the flood zone, built on the flood zone. That was done way before I came along, but that was done. So that is one of the challenges. And when I came into office, there were major financial challenges. The city had been taken over by the state. We were literally just above junk bond status. So I had some major financial challenges to work with the city and transform it into a AA+ bond rating through a lot of very, very difficult decisions. So again, here's a map of our city, and when Sandy struck, so the blue shows all of the the flood, whether it's the V zone along the waterfront. So as you can see along the bottom, that is actually the Hudson. Not on the map, but the Hudson River is right along the front, and so it's the western side away from the Hudson River that flooded mostly. So where those arrows are, the water. It's a lower elevation, so the water came in from the north and the south of the city, and literally we became an island. We became an island with the Hudson River all around us. People had fish in their homes, fish in their garages, and so this was during Irene. This was during Irene in 2011, and then Superstorm Sandy hit in 2012. So we had all of our substations underwater for over 5 days, so they couldn't even start repairing those substations until we got the water out of the city. 3 of our 4 fire stations were flooded. Our Department of Public Works was totally flooded. Our hospital was totally flooded. Our housing authority was totally flooded. We have many residents who live on the ground floor, garden level apartments, which unfortunately FEMA still considers to be basements. That's a whole nother issue, but so those homes were flooded. Senior buildings, it was really, really difficult. And so my biggest concern, when this struck was, where are those emergencies? It took 2 days to get the National Guard in to help us. So where are those seniors who are maybe having a medical emergency? Where are those children? Where, they couldn't reach us, we couldn't reach them. And that was my biggest concern. We also almost ran out of diesel fuel. So diesel fuel for the backup generators for our police and OEM operations, fuel for the police cars. There were a few roads that you could still drive around on and get the fire trucks around. So like just having that critical emergency services operating through the storm was a major challenge. So to me, like an important part of keeping our communities safe through the storm is energy resiliency. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So on the bare bones basic, one piece of equipment that we had was a pump that only cost $250. We had 2 of them, and you can use that to actually get the fuel out of the ground at the gas station, because when the power goes out, gas stations cannot pump the fuel out. But we had 2 manual pumps, one for diesel, one for regular gas. So we were able to get fuel, purchase it from them, and refuel our backup generators and all of our emergency vehicles. So that was the very basics until the federal government was able to help us get more fuel. But in the interim, that is one thing that we had to do. After Sandy, we also installed natural gas backup generators. That was a very reliable source of energy, and we had diesel backup generators. So we made the switch. We have permanently installed natural gas backup generators. That is something that, we got a lot of the funding through FEMA, and that is something you could combine it with, a performance contracting approach and get it funded without having to go to the taxpayer. So that's something that if you don't have natural gas backup generators and you have natural gas in your area, I really encourage you to look at. And where we also did planning and started planning right away for a microgrid. So a microgrid adds an additional layer of safety for the community. So this is our Main Street, Washington Street. We're doing a road project. I was able to get the council to fund the fiber for that microgrid. So we're moving forward with that. But just to tell you very briefly, what is a microgrid? It's basically you have various loads. For us, it was looking at the police station, a pharmacy. We had different OEM operations where you have natural gas backup generators, but you can combine it with solar, you can combine it with battery storage. It's all connected through a network. And if one goes down, it's all connected through a network. So you keep those critical assets running through the storm. I mean, the pump station that, we would have been underwater for a month if the pump station went out, and it was very close to getting flooded. So this microgrid in the future will help to keep the community safe. And I've learned, since my job at Schneider, that it's not just resiliency, it actually can make your energy costs can be reduced. So it's another benefit for, I just wanted to put that out there as far as considering a microgrid as part of your energy resiliency and your energy, your strategy going forward to keep your community safe. So I also wanted to mention, this is Hoboken's microgrid and the analysis that we've done, and they're looking at how they're going to be funding that, looking at potentially energy as a service strategy. But layered on top of that, and this is again something that doesn't really cost money, we had a community emergency response team. The structure for that can be through FEMA, but we had about 100 trained volunteers that then was able to provide the support, as we had about 5,000 volunteers coming in to help us, and we were able to manage that and able to do it effectively because we had that structure in place. And those volunteers, they ran the shelters, they knocked on doors before the event and really helped to get people prepared, to get people who needed to get out of harm's way to get out. They were part of the communication strategy, supporting the police, because as many of you, maybe elected officials know, when an emergency happens, everyone's calling the police department. The police department doesn't have time to manage that, and so it's our CERT team that is the call-in center that manages that. So, it doesn't really cost money to do this. It's a volunteer structure, but it's extremely effective, and we also delivered food and medicine to our seniors who were stuck in their buildings, and we were able to do that with all volunteers and keep everyone safe through the storm in Hoboken. So I'm very, very proud of that. The other thing that we did was after Sandy, we passed a flood prevention ordinance that said in the future, no development can have residential on the ground floor, and that all future development has to raise up those mechanicals. So for example, the mechanicals for elevators now have to be above the flood zone level so that, and that's a big part of the recovery in an urban area, is having those elevators functional right away. So this, for the future, for future development, will make sure that that happens. So then we, talking about flood resiliency. So, after we got the water out and the power back on, we were focused on, how are we going to protect for the long term? Oh, and after we got the debris out, which I would really talk to Evan, because the debris management, that is also a major challenge. I felt like I was in a war zone with the amount of debris, 12 feet, 14 feet high, all over the city that we had to remove. It was a major, major challenge. So being prepared for that and knowing how you're going to fund it and manage it is really, really important. I was trying to go to FEMA and to the state and say, listen, we can't raise our homes up on pilings. So it's nice that you're going to give me funding for my fire station, for example, but like if I just protect my fire station, then I won't be able to get the fire trucks out and we won't be able to keep our community safe. So how about if we try to have a comprehensive approach? The city maybe could put in some money, maybe get the developers and federal funding. The answer was no, no, and no, until Rebuild by Design came along. So Rebuild by Design was a really innovative approach under President Obama, under Sean Donovan, where they looked at it. It allowed us to kind of step out of the FEMA box and look at things comprehensively. And they hired teams who came in and helped us to do an evaluation. And for me, I knew this was our last chance, quite frankly. Like, as far as protecting Hoboken for the long term, I put my heart and soul into trying to really win this competition. And so what came out of the Rebuild by Design process was that it's a 4-part water management strategy. So as you can see, it's resist. So it's park as defense along the waterfront. So it's resisting at the north and south end of Hoboken. We already own some of the land. We're delaying the stormwater as much as possible from going into our sewer system. We have a combined sewer system, so that makes a big difference. We're storing the water as much as possible, and then we're discharging it. So Rebuild by Design is funding one part of that 4-part water management strategy, so the resist strategy. And I just want to, actually I'll go back to this. So I just want to say that, in addition to figuring out what's your technical solution, how are you potentially, I think the funding can come. I think there's different strategies, looking at public funding, looking at private funding, but working with the community is critical. And I will tell you, it took us 2 years to win the Rebuild by Design competition, and then it took us another 3 years to get through the community process. So when you're getting federal money, you had to go through an alternative analysis. We went from 5 to 3 to 2 to 1 to figure out exactly where are we going to have this alignment. So one option, for example, was all along the waterfront. Another option was having it go along the waterfront, the flood protection measure, but then also going down a residential street. And the residents were so angry about the possibility of going down a residential street that I literally had a room full of 250 people, actually we had to go outside because there was too many people, screaming at me to give back the money. They didn't want to move forward, which I'm sure is I'm sure for all of you to hear that, it's kind of amazing, but on the other hand, it helped me to really understand that community process, and a true community process to get to what your final solution will be is critical. And so I think it's really important to just think about that. So with Rebuild by Design, that helped us to think, okay, we were able to move towards a comprehensive solution, but we're also able to move towards a solution in partnership with our neighbors. So Weehawken to the north and Jersey City to the south. And I also brought in North Hudson Sewage Authority. They're on the western side of the city. They were severely flooded. They serve 5 communities. So by taking more of a regional process, that's also what helped us to win this competition. But what also helped us is we started, with planning and moving forward with trying to address flooding. As soon as I got into office in 2009, I mean, we were focused on this issue. We developed a green infrastructure plan, and we had a plan for 3 resiliency parks on the western side of the city. So these were elements of the greater rebuild by design, but they were projects that were already in motion, and it's part of the reason that we're supported for the funding. So we've made, just show you some of the parks. So this is the Southwest Park. So the way that I was able to fund the resiliency parks, 2 of the 3 resiliency parks, is we passed an open space trust fund back in 2007. And then what I did is we took low-interest loans through the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, which that funding comes through the EPA, so I'm sure Virginia has something similar. So it was 0 to 1% interest, low-interest loans, and I leveraged that money that was coming in every year from the Open Space Trust Fund to then get these parks, the land acquired and the parks built. So this is a 1-acre park built with green infrastructure. It's built with the green infrastructure underneath, and the concept is, for those of you who may have combined sewer system, is that we hold back this will hold back 250,000 gallons of water. We'll hold it back until the storm is done, and then it gets released into the sewer system. So that's just a graphic of how that works underneath. But it's rain gardens, it's porous pavers, and then underneath is built with green infrastructure as well. And then this is another project that we did. So this is a 2-acre park, and it will hold back 500,000 gallons of rainwater. And this was done with a redevelopment agreement. So in exchange for added density, which nothing's ever free. I really hate it when elected officials say, oh, it's free, we're just giving away lots of density. So we got something. Yeah, it's more density, but we got a 2-acre park built with green infrastructure and a public gymnasium. So it's a benefit to the community as part of the overall strategy. And so that's just an aerial view of that. And then the last park is, again, we acquired that with the Open Space Trust Fund and the low-interest loan from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. It's a 5-acre site, and it's going to be built to hold back 2 million gallons of rainwater. So for Hoboken, it's not just the storm surge. We're dealing with those heavy rain events where we get literally stormwater and sewage on our city streets. And that, before we started implementing these projects, was happening on a fairly regular basis. So that's helping us to deal, so thinking about strategies for nuisance flooding, these are some of the strategies. And then we funded the pump station. Again, that pump station is part of that four-part water management strategy in partnership with North Hudson Sewage Authority. So we funded it, they built it, they're going to maintain it for the life of the asset, which is estimated to be about 75 to 100 years. So it's something that will help to make sure that our community is safe. So, and that's kind of what the outside of the pump station. So if anyone wants to contact me and ask questions, again, I just feel like, I know it's very difficult to try and move projects forward and keep your community safe. So again, my email, dawn.zimmer@se.com. And I just want to say again that, I think it's really important as much as possible, even if your community hasn't been hit, the risk is real. So unfortunately, your community could be the next Hoboken that gets hit hard. And the question is, what plans do you have in place to try and really keep them safe through the storm? And then what plans do you have in place so that you can quickly move forward to rebuild in a way that's stronger and more resilient for the future? Thank you.